Hosea chapter 10. Hosea chapter 10 continues the complaint of God against Israel. And by Israel, we should always remember this is the northern kingdom, right? The northern kingdom. You would now notice a couple of pronouns which I want to highlight to you. You have pronouns for he, and then you have pronouns for they. And sometimes when you look at this, you go back and forth, it sounds like so weird. Why do you have he, his, right? And then their, they, their, you know? And all this seems to be very confusing. So in order for us to not be confused, you must remember that the Hebrew language follows the number of the noun. Israel is singular. The sons or children of Israel, this is plural, right? If you have that, singular would be a he. Plural would be a they. The way that Hosea is structured, you will always have three words that refer to the northern kingdom. Israel, children of Israel, and Ephraim, which is the lead tribe of the northern kingdom tribe. So one is by name of nation, one is by the people, that's why it's plural. The other one is by the lead tribe. So the lead tribe of the southern kingdom of Judah is Judah. The lead tribe of the northern kingdom of Israel is Ephraim. And this is the prophecy that Jacob made in Genesis chapter 48 when he blessed the children of Joseph and he crossed his hand and put his right hand on the head of Ephraim and thereby bringing to bear, when the kingdom was split into two, the lead tribe was Ephraim, and he became the lead of the nation or the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom. Okay? So let us take a look at these few verses. Israel empties his vine, right? Vine. Vine would be the grape plant, the grape plant. And sometimes the word vine is also a reference to Israel. And so is the fig. And so we really have to look at the context to see whether when the Bible speaks of vine and fig, whether it's referring to the nation of the northern kingdom of Israel. And then he brings forth fruit for himself. And so when they get fruits, and remember, Israel, he, they're all referring to the same, but referring to different types of references, but still the same northern kingdom. Okay, according to the multitude of his fruit, lots of vine, he increased the altars. What altars are we talking about? These are in Hosea chapter 8, verse 11, where it says Ephraim has increased the number of altars, and these altars are to go against God. And you remember, they have all these altars for the idols. So they have more and more idol worship. According to the bounty of his land, then the northern kingdom is very fruitful, very productive. They have embellished sacred pillars. Remember, pillars are important. You find this in Hosea chapter 3, verse 4. And these are trees that you carve and you get forms and shape, and they worship trees. Okay. Now their heart is divided, well, between them and God or Jehovah. They are held guilty. He will break down the altars one day and he will ruin or desecrate. All of these are future. You notice? He will break down, he will ruin. This is talking about the future. That one day Israel will do that. Right? But not right now. Not right now. Verse 3, for they now say, we have no king because we did not fear the Lord. If you remember in the context of Israel, they always had God and the judges. And from the judges, you get the people. And so what they wanted to do was to change this to king. And then judges, and then people. And they replace the king with God. So God becomes invisible. And that was what God didn't want to do with them. Initially, it was what we call a theocracy, when they listen to what God has to say. Now they have to listen to what the king has to say, but the king in turn must listen to what God says. However, when the king does not listen to what God says, the king is by himself and will lead the people away from God. And these are what it says. As for a king, what will he do for us? They have spoken words, they swear falsely, their judgment springs out like hemlock in the furrows of the field. This is talking about plowing the field, right? These are things that will trap them, trip them. The inhabitants of Samaria is the capital of the northern kingdom. They are in fear. They are terrified. Why? Because of the calf of Bet Aven. This is a place which is, I think, east of Bethel. Also in the northern kingdom, right? It's a big piece of land, and it possibly appears that they are the ones there to worship a golden calf again. People mourn for it. Their own priests cry for it because the glory has departed from it. And this idol shall also be carried to to Assyria, as a present. As a present for King Yareb, right? As a king to King of Ashur. Yareb basically means the great king. I think one of the things that we should begin to realize is, as Hosea is being spoken about, Assyria is becoming a major kingdom. Okay? And so as Assyria become a major kingdom, the kingdom that was great before Assyria is Egypt. And so if you find a map like that, you find Egypt, and then you find Assyria. And Israel is here. So one north, one south. And so Israel, Judah is here, one north, one south, and Israel was befriending the north and the south. And here it speaks about Assyria because of the up and coming new kingdom of Assyria. Ephraim shall receive shame, and Israel shall be ashamed of his own counsel. So this is about being shameful for what they do. Ephraim and Israel is referring to the same. Okay, referring to the same. As for Samaria, her king is cut off. We need to look at this word, be cut off. It would be to cease, to be silenced. When there's no more king, it's quiet, it's cut off. It's like a branch that's cut off. He's now dumb. The king has no function, no value, and you don't need a king. So one day Samaria will have no king. It'll be like a twig on the water. What it means is it is a branch floating in the water. That's what it means. And the king, it will be like that. It's useless. It will flow back and forth and it cannot do anything. Right? It cannot do anything. Also, the high places of Aven, maybe it refers to Bet Aven, but it is about iniquity. And it is idolatry. The sin of Israel shall be destroyed. So the high places are the worship places, right? They are the worship places. The thorns and thistle shall grow on their altars. Means their altars nobody can touch anymore. It will be overgrown because after they are destroyed, there'll be creeping thorn bushes, everything will be growing over it and nobody will touch it anymore. They shall say to the mountain, cover us, and to the hill, fall on us. Why? Because one of these times, they will be very afraid because there will be an impending judgment of God. This is talking about the impending judgment of God. And this is their cry, right? This is Israel's cry. O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah. Gibeah is one of the stories that we spoke about in Judges 19. Right? 19 and 20. So we talked about that the last time. It was a very weird story where this man's wife, concubine, was raped and killed, and the man, the Benjamite, cut her up into 12 pieces, sent to all the elders, and asked for justice. There they stood, the battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity. There, the children of iniquity are the people, the children of Benjamin, who went to be practicing homosexuality, right? That's the iniquity they have. Did not overtake them. The next few verses is important. So if you take a look, when it is my desire, when the time comes, God wants to chasten them. I think, how do we say this? When it is my, I think my desire is okay. When it comes to the desire of God, this is the same word for lust, for will, but it is the time when God says, I want to do something. That is what it means, right? Then I will chasten them. The word chasten here actually means discipline, right? Discipline, to, I guess we can say, to cane them, right? To discipline them. Peoples shall gather against them. Now, these peoples are important. Peoples, usually translated as Gentiles. Remember, we were talking about it earlier. Gentiles will gather against them. So this would mean non-Israel. When I bind them for the two transgression, Ephraim is a trained heifer. Heifer would be a young cow, female, that loves to thresh grain, right? And I harness a fair neck, and I will make Ephraim pull a plow. Judah shall plow, and Jacob shall break his clods. This one speaks about making flat the land for cultivation, right? Making flat the land, and is in preparation for cultivation. And these are the statements about plowing. And based on these set of words, you mean that God is going to use the imagery of plowing and farming and agriculture to explain what God is going to do to them. And so in the next few verses, just remember it's about agriculture, farming. And this is how Hosea explains it. Sow for yourselves righteousness. Reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground, for it's time to seek the Lord till he comes and rains righteousness on you. So if you take a look at this, these are all agricultural terms. So it is poetic. When it is poetic, it doesn't mean it has no meaning. Poetic basically means it is instructions delivered in a poetry form. It uses agriculture and farming as the imagery, right? As the imagery. So the word to sow is to scatter seeds. And so God is trying to tell them, make sure you focus on righteousness. Righteousness or justice, right? Things which are just. And then you will reap, you will harvest. This is what reap means. You will harvest chesed, mercy, loving kindness. Break up your fallow ground. What is fallow ground? The untilled ground. So what do you do when you plow? You break up the earth and make it loose so that you can plant things and plants will grow. Right now, the fallow ground is hard. It's in pieces. It's in lumps and clumps. Okay? So God says, break up your hardened hearts, for it is time to seek the Lord. What is to seek? Seek means to consult God, to consult God, come and ask God something, to come and look for God, right? Look for God, to study Him, to get to know Him. That is what it means. It is time to come back again. Give up all your idolatry. And when He comes, He will rain righteousness on you. The word rain here, and in particular, the Hebrew word for rain, is also the root word for Torah. This word is yara. And it is pointing, it's like the drops of rain that come straight down. It's like water that flows. And so rain is something that is used as an imagery, as instruction, until He comes and teach you what is righteousness. You sow righteousness, wait for God to come. So God doesn't appear just because you started doing and turning around. But God says, you start doing it, it's like agriculture. When the time comes, there will be rain, and when the rain comes, you can harvest. Okay? So verse 12 gives you that poetic agriculture. And then God says, but you know what? What you have done now, you have plowed wickedness. You have plowed wickedness. Wickedness is injustice, the opposite of justice. You have started to break the ground, and you are trying to plant injustice. God says, plant, sow justice, righteousness. Now you do wickedness. You will reap, and you have reaped iniquity. You have gotten all the wrong things done. Okay? You you have eaten the fruit of lies. Now, the word lie is deception. Okay? Deception. Uh, and all of these are shown to be the negative of these. Right? The opposite. So what we can see here is this. The nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, is doing everything opposite what God wants. They are not even trying to do something what God wants, but they're doing everything the opposite what God wants. The way they sow, the way they reap, and they eat of the fruit, everything is bad. Because you have trusted your own way in the multitude of your mighty men. Now, this one I want you to understand. The word trust here is to place confidence. And it says your own way. You mean their own thinking is not good, man? Well, they have placed thinking in their own way with reference to doing things without God. That is what it means. If we have decisions that we make and we have wisdom to think, and our wisdom leads us to link up with God, that's okay. But here it says you have trusted in your own way in the multitude of your mighty men. These are the men that is strong, they are brave, they can go and fight, and they just say, oh, we can depend on ourselves. And that is what it means, own way. We don't need God anymore. We can do it ourselves. All right. Now, I want to temporarily take you away from this passage to the book of Proverbs. Let me give you the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs in chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, it's a favorite verse of mine, and I think for many of you too. And it relates to our chapter 10 in Hosea. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. The word trust is to place confidence. And it says, place confidence with all your heart. And now, heart is the seat of the will. It is to make decisions. Okay? Lean not on your own understanding. And this understanding is about knowledge. Right? It's about wisdom of our own. And so in the book of Hosea, what they did was they placed confidence in their own, what they call mighty men. that these people can fight the war for them. And when they trusted men, and this would be their own understanding of the situation, then they stopped placing confidence in God. That was their biggest problem. They had trust, but they trusted on the wrong thing. And so Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 talks about us placing the confidence not in mighty men like in Hosea 10, but not in our own wisdom and our own knowledge. Not to say our knowledge is not good, but don't look at just that. Because if you look at yourself alone, without God in its place, then you are dependent only on yourself. And so you should consider your decisions with God in mind. So in all your ways, acknowledge Him. The word acknowledge is about know, right? But in this case, is to know Him. Put Him in your decisions, and He will direct, which is make straight the way that you're walking. And so that's how Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is explained. So when we come back to Hosea chapter 10, you would find that this is the contrast. You trusted in your own way, in the multitude of your mighty men. Therefore, tumult, people will have uproar. They will complain amongst your people, and for all your fortresses they shall be plundered. All the strong places, it will be broken down. As Shalman is the king of Assyria. He will come and plunder Beth Arvel in the day of battle. A mother dash pieces upon her children. They will be so scared to be captured that even mothers will kill their own children in order to avoid capture. And thus it shall be done to you, O Bethel. Bethel is a city of God, city in the northern kingdom. It means house of God, of El, right? Because of your great wickedness. Verse 15. Because of your great evil, right? It says here, evil. When you're doing things that is not right by God, when that is not what God intended and you do it. And so when it comes in the dawn is early light. At dawn, the king of Israel shall be cut off utterly, be silenced, be, what shall we say, be cut off. We saw this word earlier. Will cease, right? And will be no more. And so this is another prophecy talking about the Assyrians that will come to destroy all your fortresses. Your people will be shouting, crying for help. Even the mother will kill her own children and try to avoid capture. This is what's going to happen to you, O Bethel, because of your great wickedness. You can see here, right? At the dawn, at early light of the battle, your king will die. He will be silenced, right? Captured or seized. He will not be king anymore. And so this is a continuation of some of the things that God is talking about to the northern kingdom. This is the end of chapter 10. Okay, we will see you tomorrow then.